Hey friends, welcome back to the channel. So today I wanted to share with you my thoughts on Christopher Pike's Witch. I recently reread this, and if you've been around a while, you guys will know that this was my favorite Christopher Pike book as a child. I often tell the story, and if you don't know, I found a copy of this book at a book fair when I was in grade 5, so I was only about 10 or 11 years old. It was a book fair that was at my elementary school, and for whatever reason, I have no idea, this book wound up in an elementary school book fair. So I think it was fate, and after reading this book, I was completely hooked on everything spooky. I had kind of read, a little bit before that. I was kind of getting into the paranormal. I liked watching paranormal TV shows, and I had read a bit of the Goosebumps series, of course, but it was really Christopher Pike who was my favorite author when I was a kid, and it was his writing that really was the catalyst in getting me into all things dark and spooky. So I recently reread this, hoping that it would fulfill all of the nostalgia that I had with it in my childhood. So I wanted to share with you my thoughts after doing the reread. So this book is about a teenage girl named Julia, and Julia is what you would consider a good witch, I guess. And she is descended from a long line of witches on her mother's side. Her mother was also a witch, and she was a healer. So she considered her powers to come directly from God. So it's not any kind of like pagan witchcraft or anything like that. She considered herself to be kind of a messenger of God, and that message came through really, really strongly in this book. And I can't say I was kind of caught off guard a little bit, but I was like, wow, it's really going a religious route whenever, her mother is talking about her abilities. And so being a healer is something that she passed on to Julia. So both of the women are able to heal people by simply touching them. And, if somebody has a headache, they can be cured very easily. And then some of the symptoms from whatever ails this person will be passed on to the healer. So basically, if somebody, like I said, has a headache or a pain in the neck or whatever, Julia can touch them, and then she will get a little bit of a headache or a little bit woozy herself. So unfortunately, Julia lost her mom. Her mom tried to heal a young girl while she was also working as a nurse, and the young girl was already past help. And so it actually killed Julia's mother because she tried to help her when she knew she was already past help. So Julia is, navigating the grief of losing her mother, and then trying to deal with having these supernatural powers herself. So in the woods behind Julia's house, there is a magical pond, and Julia can have visions in this pond, but her mother always warned her, don't look into the water when the moonlight is shining on the water. And one night, Julia inadvertently does this. It was right at dusk, and she inadvertently looked into the pool of water, and she saw a vision from the future in which she was actually holding on to another teenage boy in her arms, and it looked like he had been shot in a holdup. So Julia felt really strongly that this was going to come to pass, and after she had this vision, she actually went to a football game at her high school, and she met her best friend's new boyfriend, and she recognized him immediately as the young man that was in her vision. So Julia tries to prevent the events that was in her vision from coming true. So that's kind of where the story begins. So first of all, this is a really little book. I mean, it's obviously, just a little kind of mass market paperback, and it is a little bit over 200 pages, but of course the pages are very small. So there's a lot going on in this plot for being in such a compact book, and this is what I really enjoy about these vintage YA books that are kind of short. They're geared towards middle grade and high school kids. And I also found this when I read the One Evil Summer book from the Fair Street collection. These are so tiny, and the story in them is really compact. It's really fast-paced, and it's something you can get through quickly, but there is still a lot going on in the story. It didn't feel like it was lacking in anything. There was a lot compact compacted in here, but the story still flowed really nicely. I wasn't confused, and I was really impressed at the amount of character development and plot development in such a compact little book. So we got sort of backgrounds into all of the main characters, and there's quite a few of them, quite a few of these high school kids. And I felt really attached to all of them. And it's something that I find with books that are written today, especially with YA books. The character development is either too descriptive, so you find that you're bogged down with a lot of information, or it's not enough, and you know, they're concentrating on romance and all of that kind of element as well. And of course there's those elements in these books also. But that is one thing that really impressed me when I reread this book, that there was so much happening in such a compact amount of time, and that really hooks you into the story. It really keeps you interested, and like I said, I felt for all of these characters, and there were some gruesome parts in this book for sure. And you know, I really felt that I was immersed into the story and I was right there with them. So like I said, the story was really fast-paced in here, and it wasn't only like a gruesome horror element, but there was also like a crime element as well, because of course, you know, Julia's vision has to do with a holdup, and you know, things moved really quickly. The only part that I didn't like was towards the end. There was one section, and I don't want to talk too much about it because I'm going to give away parts of the plot. Like I said, in such a small book, it's hard to, you know, talk about it without giving away plot points. But there's one section that I felt, even though this is such a compact book, it was a little bit dragged out. But even though there was that one little part that was kind of dragged out, it was the only part really plot-wise that I didn't really like too much. The rest of it was fantastic, and I mean, it's been like almost 30 years since I read this book, so I couldn't remember a whole lot about it, but I enjoyed it just as much now as I did when I was a kid, and I read this book over and over. I thought it was fantastic. So let's talk about the nostalgia a little bit. Not only was it nostalgic for the fact that I love this kind of horror where it's just compact, everything flows really nicely, it's, you know, it's fast-paced, and there's some gruesome stuff going on. There was definitely, you could tell this story was happening in the early 90s. And that was just awesome because, you know, I remember as a kid when I was growing up in the 90s, and I've often talked about on this channel about how I used to love going to video rental places. And there was one section in this book, and I literally just had to smile because it was a group of teenagers, and they were talking about going and renting out movies for the night and just, you know, sitting together and watching movies. And one of the characters said, "Oh, do you own a VCR?" As if it was like this big thing. And then the other guy says, "Well, no, but we can rent a VCR." And I remember when I read that, which is something I had completely forgotten about, but when you went to the video rental place, I don't know if anybody else had this, but the one that we went to, you could rent VCRs if you didn't have one. And I just found that so funny. And there was a couple of plot points along the way that, you know, you could tell this was an early 90s book. I believe this came out in 1990. And it was just absolutely fabulous to kind of sink in there and, you know, go back to familiar things from my own childhood. So the only turnoff that I found with this book, and it's just a testament again to the time that it was written, there was a couple of spots in here that were quite sexist. And it was to the point where I actually laughed out loud, and I didn't laugh because it was funny or I was agreeing with it. I was like, oh my God, I can't believe that was just said. And I mean, often, you know, if you watch older television shows or you read older books, which I'm actually doing right now, I'm watching old episodes of like 90s TV shows on Amazon Prime, and you know, certain things are said and it's just stuff that came out in that time, but you're like, oh my God, I can't believe they just said that. And there's a couple of spots in this that was it was definitely like that. And like I said, I just had to laugh, not because it was funny, but it was a total testament of the time that it was written. So besides that, you know, those couple of areas where there was a little bit of sexism going on and misogyny going on, which, you know, it's going to come through in these older horror books, I thoroughly enjoyed rereading this. It really did have all of the nostalgic feels that I was looking for from when I read it the first time. You know, sometimes you read or watch things in adulthood that you loved as a kid and you're like, wow, that's not really how I remembered it. I'm kind of disappointed. But this just ticked all of the boxes for me. It was fabulous, and I am going to continue to collect and reread as many Christopher Pike as I can. And you know, to me, you can't get any better than this. Now, I did give this book only 4 stars because there were a couple of things, like I said, that kind of brought that down a little bit, but I still had an absolutely fabulous time. So there you guys go. Those are my opinions on my reread of Christopher Pike's Witch. I was a little bit nervous going into this because I was like, oh my god, I don't want to ruin this for myself. I want to have all of the good memories. But I still had fantastic memories, like now, just as I did then. So thank you everybody for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to give me a thumbs up and leave me a comment down below. Let me know if you guys enjoy reading Christopher Pike. I often talk to people outside of BookTube and they have no idea who Christopher Pike is. They've heard of Stephen King, they've heard of R.L. Stine, they've heard of Anne Rice, but you know, he's just such a gem and I love his writing. So that's everything I have for you today, guys. Until next time, stay spooky everybody. Bye.